It's one of those moments where you stop, blink, and think, wait, since when is Canada the one standing up and saying, enough? Because that's exactly what's happening right now, and it's catching a lot of people off guard. Over the past few days, Prime Minister Mark Carney hasn't just pushed back quietly. He stepped straight into the global spotlight, signaling that Canada is not going to sit on the sidelines while long-standing alliances are shaken and red lines are tested. And whether people agree with his tone or not, the message is landing loudly. Canada is prepared to stand with its allies, even if that puts it at odds with Washington. Let's start with something most people overlook. This isn't just about one comment, one speech, or one diplomatic phone call. What we're watching is a coordinated shift in how Canada presents itself on the world stage, especially as tensions grow inside NATO and around the Arctic. The flashpoint, at least rhetorically, has been Greenland. Former President Donald Trump has revived talk about Greenland in ways that many allies see as destabilizing, and Carney has responded by drawing an unusually firm line. He's made it clear that the future of Greenland is not a bargaining chip, not a negotiating tactic, and not something for outside powers to decide. In his words, that decision belongs to Greenland and Denmark alone. Here's where things get interesting. Carney hasn't said this in isolation. Almost immediately, he followed it up with public confirmation of conversations with key global leaders. Germany's Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, was one of them. Carney shared that they discussed Euro-Atlantic security, the war in Ukraine, trade cooperation, and explicitly support for Denmark's sovereignty, including Greenland. That detail matters more than it might seem at first. By naming Greenland directly, Carney wasn't just offering diplomatic pleasantries, he was signaling alignment. It was Canada saying, out loud, that if pressure escalates, Denmark is not standing alone. From my perspective, that's a deliberate move. It frames Canada as part of a broader European-aligned front, even though Canada sits across the Atlantic. And it quietly pushes back on the idea that NATO unity automatically follows Washington's lead. Carney didn't stop there. He also spoke with Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. Officially, the conversation focused on Venezuela and support for a peaceful, democratic transition. But the subtext is hard to miss. Brazil has been increasingly vocal about resisting great power dominance and protecting regional sovereignty. When Canada and Brazil find common language, it signals that this isn't just a European issue. It's about how middle powers respond when the global order feels unstable. Most people never realize this, but these conversations are rarely random. Leaders don't publicize calls unless they want the world to notice the alignment. Carney could have kept these discussions behind closed doors. Instead, he's choosing visibility. Now here's the twist. While Washington has been comparatively muted in recent days on Russia's latest attacks in Ukraine, Carney stepped into that silence. After Russia launched what Canada described as an Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile, striking Ukrainian energy infrastructure and residential areas, Carney issued a clear condemnation. He called it a dangerous escalation. He emphasized civilian harm. And he reaffirmed Canada's commitment to working with international partners to end what he described as an illegal war of aggression. In my view, that language wasn't accidental. It echoed the kind of statements the United States itself used to make reflexively. For some observers, it felt like Canada was filling a leadership vacuum, at least rhetorically. That perception is fueling a lot of online reaction. Supporters argue that Canada is finally acting like a confident, independent player instead of a quiet follower.
The Danish Prime Minister has said that any type of military force used to annex Greenland would be the end of NATO. Do you concur with that assessment?
Well, let me reiterate what I said to Mr. Noel, which is that the future of Greenland is a decision for Greenland and for Denmark exclusively. It's their decision. Secondly, from a NATO context, the way I would frame it is that the western flank of NATO, which would include Greenland, the Arctic, is, given the evolving threat environment, is an area that we as NATO Canada, obviously, importantly, given our geography, need to invest more. And this is a point that we've been making in recent years and since I became Prime Minister that we've really stressed. And with our buildup, that's just beginning of our military capabilities, we are making heavy investments in the Arctic. We'll be working with our Nordic partners. We'll be working through NATO. This is one of the issues I'll be discussing with the Secretary General as part of an ongoing discussion with him.
Critics say Carney is overreaching, inserting Canada into conflicts that could spiral beyond its control. And then there's a third group, watching nervously, wondering whether this kind of posture makes Canada safer or more exposed. The tension becomes even sharper when you look at the economic backdrop. Around the same time these diplomatic moves were unfolding, revised U.S. job numbers showed downward adjustments, including losses following Trump's so-called Liberation Day in April. Meanwhile, Canada has been averaging roughly 22,000 new jobs per month compared to about 10,000 per month in the U.S. over the same period. To be clear, no one should overstate a single economic snapshot. But politically, those numbers feed a narrative. Canada is stable, growing, and confident, while the U.S. looks more inward and volatile. That contrast shapes how allies interpret leadership. Carney reinforced that image during remarks in Paris, where he spoke about strengthening alliances against Russian aggression and increasing NATO investment in the Arctic. When asked directly whether a military move against Greenland would effectively end NATO, his answer was careful but firm. He reiterated that Greenland's future is not for outsiders to decide. He then pivoted to the Arctic, describing it as NATO's western flank and an area that requires serious investment given the evolving threat environment. Canada, he said, is already increasing its Arctic military capabilities and working closely with Nordic partners through NATO. Here's the part most people misunderstand. Carney wasn't threatening war, he was laying groundwork. He was saying that deterrence comes from preparation and unity, not from silence or ambiguity. That message has resonated with figures like Charlie Angus, a longtime Canadian politician and outspoken commentator. Angus has been blunt in recent interviews, arguing that allies need to call the bluff when territorial threats are floated rather than trying to appease or deflect. Angus has pointed to NATO's Article 4, which allows members to consult when a nation's territorial integrity or security is threatened. Triggering it doesn't mean war, it means formal recognition that a line is being tested. According to Angus, that consultation could go one of several ways. One possibility is de-escalation, where public pressure forces rhetoric to cool down. Another is escalation, where threats harden into confrontations that nobody fully controls. And the most dangerous outcome, in his view, is paralysis, where allies hesitate and territory is effectively taken without resistance. Whether one agrees with Angus or not, his argument highlights the fear many smaller and mid-sized nations share. That hesitation sends the wrong signal. He's also shared personal stories from NATO meetings that left him uneasy, describing moments when allies appeared more focused on avoiding conflict with Washington than on asserting shared principles. But he contrasts that with what he sees now. Canada investing more heavily in Latvia, maintaining trainers in Ukraine, opening a consulate in Greenland, and expanding Arctic surveillance independent of the United States. From his perspective, and from Carney's actions, Canada is no longer waiting to see what happens next. It's positioning itself as a connector, a country trying to hold together relationships between Europe and other democratic allies during a period of uncertainty. That's where this story really lands. It's not just about Trump. It's not just about Greenland. It's about whether the post-World War II alliance system adapts, fractures, or hardens under pressure. Some commentators think Carney's strategy is risky but necessary. Others think it's symbolic and could fade once political winds change. But almost everyone agrees on one thing. Canada is acting differently than it has in decades. People are watching. Allies are listening. And the consequences of these signals will play out over months, not days. We don't know yet whether this approach will cool tensions or sharpen them. But what's clear is that Canada has decided silence is no longer an option. If you found this helpful, consider subscribing. I appreciate you.